Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Block. It's been a minute. It's been a few weeks since we've done one of these, but I'm thrilled to be joined today by Trevor Lane. You may know him from Lakers Nation or the Lakers Collective or the Basketball Bulletin. Trevor, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on here. Excited to talk some more basketball with you. And I got to say, on that intro, that was pretty good hang time there on that one. You held that for a bit.
We're working on the breath control. I think that's an important thing. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang going. Midday gang today. Iceberg Watkins says salute Jovan, Trevor Mods. And chat, yes, shout out to everybody. All right, so today's show, we're going to be doing our 2026 NBA All-Star selections. Today is the final day for voting, so if you want to get your vote in, today is the final day, and it counts 3 times as much as the normal vote today. So we'll be putting that in the description, but wanted to go through our starters, our bench, our locks, the borderline picks, and just kind of talk through the guys we agree on, the guys we maybe disagree on. And I think this is a really tough, just to kick it off, this is a really tough all-star ballot this year. You also have the backdrop of it's going to ultimately, we're still picking 5 West starters, 5 East starters, 12 players overall for each conference, but then that's going to be split into 3 teams of 8, including 1 international team. And if there are 7 international players selected among the 24, then the league will step in and add a 25th All-Star and 8th international player. But the inverse is also true, where if there's 9 international players and only 15 U.S. players, then the league will also step in, add that 16th U.S. player. So a lot of different ways that this could play out, but I wanted to kick it to you. I think for both of us, our starters are likely going to be locks, right? These are the guys that you're picking to start. So whether they end up being starters or coming off the bench, these are the guys we think for sure will be making it. And then I'm sure we'll have some bench locks, and then we'll get into the borderline guys. So Trevor, who are your 5 West starters and who are your 5 East starters?
Okay, so my West starters are SGA, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Wemby, Anthony Edwards for the Western Conference. Are we in lockstep there?
We are in lockstep.
I figured we probably would be. All right, for the East, I've got Giannis Antetokounmpo, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, and I went Jaylen Brown in the East.
We are in lockstep. For me, it came down to Maxey versus Donovan Mitchell for that 5th spot with the starters in the East, and then Ant versus Steph with the 5th starter spot in the West. But we have the same 10 starters. So what about looking at now your bench? Who are the locks in the West off the bench, and who are the locks in the East off the bench?
So the locks in the West, obviously, because, and I was making the same decision you were between Ant and Steph Curry, that obviously has got to make Steph Curry a lock for the Western Conference bench. I also have, with the way the Rockets have played this season, they've been up and down, but Kevin Durant, he was a lock for me there. I think Jamal Murray finally makes it this year. This is the year that he does, particularly with how they've played without Jokic, the Denver Nuggets. He's putting up some big numbers.
He's averaging 25 and 8. He's having a crazy season.
If he's ever going to make it, it's now.
If he's ever making it, he deserves it.
And then my other locks were, I figure OKC is definitely getting 2. I'm going Chet Holmgren. And then I also went with Alperen Sengun as my locks from the Western Conference.
I really wish we had more to disagree on here, but that's my exact, my 5 locks were Curry, Durant, Sengun, Murray, and Holmgren. I think that top 10 to me has to make it in some order, right? What about in the East?
In the East, obviously, because the conversation was Donovan Mitchell, he would be the first lock there. I've got Jalen Johnson, who was he was going to be my most improved last year going into the season. I was a year late on him. He may get it this year, or a year early. I mean, Jalen Johnson, I've got him in. Scotty Barnes, with the way the Raptors have been playing. Jalen Duren, And some may disagree with this, but I think the Knicks have been too good. I've got Cat making it.
We have our first disagreement, which
All right.
I like it. So you had me with the top 9. I had Mitchell, Duran, Barnes, and Johnson as all locks. So I mean, right there we have 19 of the same 24 All-Stars. Cat was in my borderline section, so I broke this down with like the starters, the bench locks, and then the borderline guys, which for both conferences, I have a pool of somewhere between like 7 to 10 guys for ranging between the final 2 or 3 spots. Cat was in my borderline group. I ultimately did not pick him, but I think he'll probably make it. I just, I leaned in a couple different directions, but then, so looking at like the borderline guys, do we want to just like maybe list some names that we considered and then we can reveal our final? Looks like for you, it's a couple guys on each side. For me, it's 2 in the West, 3 in the East.
Yeah, for me in the West, I've got Devin Booker, LeBron James, Austin Reeves, Denny Avdia was another one. Who am I missing? Oh, the Clippers guys. Kawhi. For a little bit I toyed with Harden, but I think I just leaving Kawhi in that borderline group.
So I had a little. So I had Booker, Kawhi, LeBron, Denny, Lauri Markkanen, Austin, Stephon Castle, and De'Aaron Fox as my guys that I was considering, and then I picked 2 of those guys. Who'd you go with to round it out?
So this is by far, I think, the most difficult decision. I thought the East was an easier choice for me. There's a number of guys that are there that are deserving, and it was hard to weigh team record, individual play, games played, and then let's face it, narrative matters in the All-Star game too. I ultimately, because I think they're one of the feel good stories of the NBA this season, I ultimately went with Devin Booker with the Phoenix Suns, and I could not leave LeBron out. As much as I thought about doing it, this could be it for him. This could be his final year. I just don't see realistically LeBron not making it. He's really come on strong lately. I know he missed the start of the season, but I think the fact that he's LeBron James is ultimately going to matter. So I went with LeBron.
So we not disagree, but I think there's no wrong picks here, right? I think a lot of these guys, even before the show, like I just did about an hour of research here for just the borderline guys, of going through their numbers, going through their seasons, comparing them to each other on StatHead. So I have a twist that is going. I will reveal the twist at the end here. So I'm going to make my 2 selections, but then there is a twist based on how my rosters shook out. But my 2 final guys were Kawhi Leonard and Denny Avdia. You can make a case that Kawhi Leonard is having the best offensive season of his career, which it's flying under the radar because of just because of the trees and because of all that's going on with the Clippers. But Kawhi's averaging a career high in points and true shooting percentage, and is top 5 in both 2-point field goal percentage and 3-point field goal percentage for his career. So this is a guy who's a first ballot Hall of Famer who we know, like, with the exception maybe like the past 12 months, when he's been healthy, he's been in that top 10, top 15 conversation. I don't think he's quite that level right now, but I think he's played at an all-star level. And I will also note, like, I am an analytics guy, advanced stats guy. His advanced numbers compared to the rest of the field were far and away the best. It was not close between Kawhi and anyone else. And then Denny, it was really tough for me because I really wanted to put Austin on. I thought Austin, had he not gotten hurt, I thought Austin, I would have picked Austin over Denny. And but then when you look at the games, the minutes, and just how close they are already, and then also factoring in like Denny is far and away the number 1 option there, where Austin can fluctuate between most often the number 2 or 3 option in LA, but can be that number 1 guy. We just don't see it a lot because Luka and LeBron are there. I ultimately went with Denny, but again, there's a twist. It will be coming out of the Western Conference, so stay tuned for that. Looking at the East, who were the guys you were considering, and who are the guys you ended up going with.
So, given that I had Cat as my final guy in there, I had Pascal Siakam, Des Bain. I wish Franz Wagner was healthy for the bulk of the season. Michael Porter Jr., Norman Powell were the primary guys that I was looking at in the Eastern Conference. I ultimately went with, and again, trying to balance team record and everything. It was so weird that I went with two of the lower, worst records, but I ultimately went with Pascal Siakam and Michael Porter Jr. I think there's a lot people go to empty calories with players who put up big numbers on teams that are losing. But when you look at the efficiency for these guys, especially when we look at the efficiency for Michael Porter Jr., with defenses being able to be geared towards him, I've been really, really impressed with that. So I think if he were in the West, is he making the All-Star team? No, but in the East, I think I'm going to give him that final spot.
I like it. I went in a different direction. So we did depart at the end of the rosters, which I think is great for the spirit of discussion here. So similarly, I was looking at Franz, Paolo, MPJ, Norm Powell, Bam, Siakam, Cat, and Bain. I ultimately went MPJ because I was surprised at how well he rated out in most advanced metrics, and he was pretty much at the top of the list in most of these across this field. I went Norm Powell, who was a borderline guy last year, but has been even better this year in Miami. And I think people are sleeping on the season that he's having in terms of averaging 24 points per game on really high efficiency. And especially comparing like him versus Bam, he was lapping the field with Bam in terms of their head-to-head metrics. So I don't feel great about Norm Powell, especially looking at the guys who aren't making it in the West compared to the guys who are potentially making it in the East. But that's just the state of the East right now. And then I think my most controversial one, especially when factoring in the games played in the West, was Franz. I think Franz has been Orlando's best player, and I do think Franz has been, if we're just ranking these guys on actual performance this season, I think Franz has probably been the 10th best player in the East. It's just because he's only played 24 games. Now, this is where I bring in the context of, again, I think that the depth at the bottom of the West is much deeper than, Franz is not competing with a Kawhi or a Denny or a Booker the way that Austin and LeBron are in terms of those guys missing a certain amount of games and that impacting their selection. If the rest of the field in the West was MPJ and Powell and some of these other guys in the East, I would have leaned LeBron or Austin with that final spot. So to recap here, I think we had 10 of the same in the West and 10 of the same in the East. You had, so let's go through it. So we both had Jokic, SGA, Luka, Wemby, Ant as our West starters.
Yep.
Then we had Steph, KD, Şengün, Murray, Chet as our 10 locks. And then you had Devin Booker and LeBron James for your final two spots. I had Kawhi Leonard and Denny Avdia. Then in the East, we had Giannis, Brunson, Cade, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey as our 5 starters. Then we had Mitchell, Duran, Barnes, and Johnson as our 4 bench locks. You had Cat, Siakam, and MPJ. And then I had MPJ, Franz, and Norm Powell. So 10 out of 12 in both conferences there. And then, again, you could go through the last couple spots and debate that. But here's my twist. Here is the twist with all this. Going through my All-Star selections, I have 15 American players and 9 international players. And because of that, and that even works because I was debating whether Cat should be in there. For me, it came down to Cat versus Franz for that final spot. But even if you put Cat in there, he technically has played for the Dominican Republic, so he would still be an international player like Franz. Because of that, the U.S. gets a 16th player. Adam Silver makes the call, and LeBron James gets in as the 16th player on the American side. And LeBron, year 23, age 41, becomes an all-star. So that is my caveat. That is my, with how the rosters played out, I had an extra spot for the Americans, and I think LeBron gets the nod.
See, I like that. I gave Kat the spot, and then I went through after I made my list, and I totaled her up, and I went, fortuitously, I wound up with 8 internationals, 16 Americans, and it just happened to work out that way. But looking at it now, I'm kind of wishing I did it the way you did, because that gives me an extra spot to play with, and then I don't feel bad about leaving one more player out of it. Let me ask you this. Do you think, would LeBron be more excited making the All-Star team, or more excited getting a week off to spend with his family for the first time in forever?
More excited getting a week off to spend time with his family and golf and do his golf simulators and actual golfing. I think that the caveat here with LeBron and the All-Star situation is just that it's in LA, so he doesn't have to travel. Like I said last night on my show, if it was in Indiana or Milwaukee, I don't think LeBron is clamoring or pushing to be an all-star. And I'm not even saying he is clamoring or pushing to be an all-star, but like, I think he'd be totally fine missing that weekend of going to one of those cities and having to, like, it is a lot. I mean, we've both been to All-Star weekend. Like the ask on the players is there are so many events, not only like the league sanctioned events, but you'll get invites to different things that, like, you know, Nike's doing events. So then all the Nike athletes have to do certain events, Adidas, et cetera. But then you also have the other partnerships and sponsorships that they have. It's just like basically from 8 a.m. to midnight, these guys are doing something, some sort of event for 3 straight days. And like, of course, they're multimillionaires and they're famous and like it's part of the job. But I think that the guys who are going to miss the cut, I think are really going to enjoy not having to do all that and just getting a bit of a break, including potentially LeBron. But my toughest cut ultimately was Devin Booker. I just felt because of how well the Suns are playing, it was just like, I feel like he deserves it. I just was looking at it and like, this might be arguably his worst season in the past 5 years. Like you could make that case. And it does feel like he's obviously their best player and been a big part of their success, but Jordan Ott and his coaching, Dylan Brooks and his arrival, Colin Gillespie and his ascension, Jordan Goodwin has been a big piece off the bench. Like it just feels like that there's a lot of credit to go around. And there are certain situations where I think you primarily credit the best player or the star. I don't know that this is one of them. So for me, ultimately, I think Kawhi and Denny have been better. And then with the league being able to step in and make a call, I think they would make that call for LeBron.
Yeah, I agree. I think the league, especially with it being in LA, like you said, this will be, I think it'll be an easy pick for Adam Silver to go with LeBron. I ultimately leaned in a little bit heavier to the narrative of the Suns being the better, or being one of the feel-good stories of the season, to get Devin Booker the spot, which is what's interesting about the All-Star pick, is that there isn't really any kind of set criteria that you have to follow in terms of what qualifies for an All-Star or not, whether it's whatever certain stats that you have to hit, or team success versus individual success, all those sorts of things. Because you're right, look, there you can argue that for the Suns, it's been more of a team-wide thing, the way that they're playing, the style they're playing, and that's certainly credit to Jordan Ott. But we also do see team success certainly factor in, and the teams that have positive narrative around them, the teams that have that positive buzz, you tend to see guys go into the All-Star game. But the bottom line, as it always is with any All-Star pick, same thing when we get into, top 75 all time or whatever, there's going to be great players that are going to be on the outside looking in, and then we get to have the conversations about who got snubbed and should they be angry and all of that. But for me, the toughest one for me was LeBron, trying to figure out whether or not to include him or to go with someone else. I was almost going with Denny Avdia. I feel like he's very deserving. Kawhi Leonard as well. The Clippers just had such a negative start to the season and then came on strong. So I really struggled with that last spot, and I ultimately just let the homer in me win out and gave it to LeBron.
It's fair, man. I mean, looking at it since that Philly game, which is now, we have 15 games here. Over the past 15 games, LeBron is averaging 26 points per game, over 6 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.3 steals, shooting 54% from the floor, including 33% on threes and 64% on twos. That's where he's been incredible, just getting downhill, getting to the rim, getting into the paint, getting out in transition. The turnovers have been reasonable at 2.9. Like he's been playing some great basketball. So, and that's going on over a month now. That starts around December 7th. So, and like looking at it, since that over the past 15 games, he has 2 games under 20 points, which not that scoring is everything, but the Lakers have obviously needed a certain level of offensive output from him, especially with Austin out. And he's been delivering on a nightly basis, basically 25 plus in most nights. So that's been, I think, a level of consistency from him that it's just unfortunate he missed the first 14 games of the season and then also started relatively slow by his standards. But the other thing here that kind of just thinking through like how this could play out, we don't know for sure if Jokic is going to be available or if Denver's going to want him to play in the All-Star game. So maybe Jokic he's going to get voted in seemingly, and I think he clearly deserves to be a starter. But if Jokic misses, then you also have an injury replacement. So that's maybe where you get Booker and LeBron in there, or maybe Booker and LeBron make it, and then you get Kawhi and Denny in that way. Like there's different ways to play out. I think those are probably the 14 guys I think that should make it in some capacity. But I also think you could just expand the All-Star format in the future to have like 15 and 15, 3 teams of 10, right? If they're going with like this 3-team format.
Now, if it is Jokic, would it necessitate that it's a international replacement?
Interesting. I was thinking West replacement, but do you have to go West international? But then that's also where if Denny doesn't originally make it, Denny would check that box. I have no other
uncharted territory. I mean, we have.
I guess Lauri Markkanen's the other one that could make it. But yeah, that's interesting if it has to be the same conference or the same country affiliation or both, and that changes that answer.
With this, if you're going to this kind of format, Team USA versus the world, and this is something I was thinking about earlier when I was going through this whole process, wouldn't it make more sense to just eliminate conferences?
Yeah. I think they like the traditional element of it. I'm curious. So let's just say they did, and we had to pick 10 starters. Who are the 10 starters here? We ran through this too quickly. We ran through this in like less than 20 minutes. So let's just have some fun with it. Who would be your 10 starters regardless of conference?
So I would stick my 5 West starters would not change. I would stick with those guys. My 5 East starters, I wouldn't change. I mean, Jaylen Brown has been insane. I probably wouldn't change too much, but I guess you could make an argument for Steph bumping somebody out of that East starting group. And I guess I would, God, it's hard to take anybody out, but I guess it would be Curry over Maxey. If I was going to make
that would be the only thing. It would be close. Maxey's having an incredible year, and he's really carried that team. That's tough. I'm not sure. But between Steph and Maxey,
it's more what would happen is the guys at the bottom of the West table, of the West list, would wind up bumping some of the guys at that's where Michael Porter Jr. wouldn't make it. That's where maybe Pascal Siakam on my list, doesn't make it, or Norman Powell or somebody like that doesn't make it, and that's where
Norman and Franz I think get kicked out, and So the back end of the rosters I think are different, but it's interesting that like not every year it's the 10 guys who are starting are probably the 10 deserving guys, but I think you can make that case, right? I would say at least 9 of the 10 would still be there for me, and then it's a question of Maxey versus Steph, and frankly I think the Sixers have been better than the Warriors this season, so that gives Maxey a little bit of an edge there. One other thing, just looking at this before we take a quick break and then open it up to Q&A, I think the international team would kick either of the U.S. team's asses, just looking at the way that these rosters are. And of course, it's split where you're splitting the American talent in half. But even at full strength, I think if you had looking at like the starting group for the international team, if at full strength, is Wemby, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, and SGA. You can make a case those are the 5 best players in the NBA.
Yep.
And they're all on the same team and they're all starting. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it would not be close. It would not be close when you look at internet, and that's why I expect the international team to actually even to emerge victorious if everybody, which it's the All-Star game.
Assuming everyone plays.
Assuming everyone competes, and you know what I mean when I say competes. If they don't, obviously that throws everything up in the air. But yeah, I think the international team is much, much stronger than the American team, which if we were to do like a full show, maybe that would bleed into a conversation about does Team USA have some concerns moving forward when we get into the next Olympic cycle and all of that. But yeah, I do think that you may have indeed the top 5 MVP candidates when we're talking about who would be the starting 5 for that team. And it's actually like even positionally, they fit fairly well. Like it's not perfect, but there's even like a little bit of fit between those top 5. And then you add in guys like Sengun. I mean, if you put Kat in, Siakam, Denny Avdia, these kind of guys, that international team's going to be really good.
Yeah, they're loaded. And to your point, like you could go Luka Giannis pick and roll. You could go Luka Jokic pick and roll. You could go Luka Wemby pick and roll. You could go Shea Wemby pick. Like you could just the options are infinite. You could also do inverted pick and rolls here and have Giannis handling the ball, Shea screening for him, Jokic handling the ball, Wemby handling the ball. Like the just collective skill and talent and just like giftedness of that group is. It's off the charts. Like it's really, I think that's one of the better starting all-star groups of all time, frankly. Like I think assuming Wemby has the career we think he's going to have and at least can be healthy for, reasonably healthy for 10, 12 years, those are 5 first ballot Hall of Famers easily. I mean, Jokic and Giannis and Shea and Luka, I think are already there and will go down as all top 50 players, but at a minimum, like if not top 40, top 30, we'll see. It's wild. It's crazy. Like that collection of talent. Like Wemby's the least accomplished, and Wemby arguably has the highest ceiling of the 5, right? It's crazy.
It really is. I mean, just imagine, right? Like the first thing that pops into my head is Jokic with the ball, high post, Wemby on the wing, getting a back screen from SGA and then rolling to the rim with either a switch with a guard on him, and then Jokic is the guy delivering the pass, where even if the switch happens, it's Wemby against a small in the post, or SGA is popping out free up top, and then he can create off of a closeout. I mean, what do you do with that? Especially when it's Jokic delivering the pass. Like the possibilities are like JJ Redick, if he had that group to coach, we wouldn't see him for 3 months. He would be locked in the basement, just scribbling out plays for hours on end. He'd be a madman by the end of it, but it would be a lot of fun.
So yeah, who would be the coaches right now? Because didn't Dagnall coach last year? So it can be what, Mitch Johnson and JB Bickerstaff. Those are are they're gonna have 3 coaches? No, I guess technically with
I don't
3. I don't know how they're doing that.
I don't know how they're doing that either. Does the international coach have to be international?
That's a good. I mean, you have some good options. You got Darko. You got Thiago Splitter.
I mean, I guess Darko would be the highest in the standings.
Darko would be, probably the choice there.
Huh. That's interesting too.
Then you have like Kenny Atkinson, who's got the French citizenship. He's part of the French coaching staff, technically behind Toronto in the standings. But yeah, I guess Darko would be the international coach. That'd be cool. But quickly, because I noticed, where did it go? Peyton Watson truther, which I like that name. Why no Jamal Murray? We both had Jamal Murray as one of our locks. I think I actually have Murray in that, like maybe as high as 8th on my West ballot. So Jamal Murray is definitely in there. He's having a career year, and we touched on him earlier in the show. We both had him as a lock. So Jamal Murray is definitely on there.
Yes,
anything else before we get into the Q&A here?
No, just this is a fun exercise, and I think the biggest takeaway is that the NBA is in good hands, and there is a lot of talent in this league.
Agreed. All right, we're going to take a quick break to highlight the sponsor of today's show, Fanatics Live, and then once we are back, we will get into the Q&A. Be right back. Like many of you, I grew up collecting basketball cards and Pokemon cards, and so when I had the opportunity to partner with Fanatics Live and rip some cards live for you guys, I cannot think of a more fun and nostalgic activity. Fanatics Live is an awesome way to get in on the fun of ripping sports cards. It's an app where fans buy and rip cards together 24/7 with live on-screen hosts guiding the action. Let's go.
All right, Jovan. Good luck. Show it to me, come on.
Okay.
2025 Panini Instant NBA Draft Night Cooper Flag Rookie. This one is to 68,380. Definitely really high numbered, but PSA 10 Gem Mint, Competent 50, which for how many numbered cards there are, 50 is
Take
not
another
a bad
player
comp
from
at all.
Dallas. There you go. First NBA rip, and I land a Cooper Flag card. New users can get a free instant rips pack with a graded card to try it out. Use the link in the description to download the app and join your first stream to get your pack. Thank you to Fanatics Live for sponsoring this video. All right. Shout out to Fanatics Live. Appreciate it.
Cooper Flag.
Link in the description below. Yeah, I got a Cooper Flag rookie card on my first NBA pack. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that. So let's get into it. We got a super chat here, and then we'll get into the rest of the questions from the chat. Just as a heads up, Trevor will be leaving at 3 p.m. Pacific time, so we have about 22 minutes here to get through the chat, and then we'll be bringing in Keoni to do the corner 3 segment. First one from Musel K420. Thank you for the super chat. Jovan and Trev, any inside info on Lakers trade rumors?
I mean, nothing specific. Like, the Lakers tend to be pretty quiet this time of year, mostly just that they don't want to do anything that's going to potentially jeopardize the flexibility they've got coming up here in the summer, or if I'm using the right word, it's optionality, I suppose, this summer. But
Can never have enough optionality.
Essentially, but this is very much standard for this time of year, right? You're seeing it right now with the Mavs, right? Putting out there that if they're going to trade Anthony Davis, it's got to be for a good trade, because, you know, a lot of teams want to make bad trades, apparently. So the Mavs put out there, we'll only trade him for a good trade. The Grizzlies are saying, no, we need young talent. We don't want to take on future salaries for Ja Morant, right? Does anybody buy they're actually going to get that? No, but this is what teams need to put out there this time of year. So from the Lakers side, where their biggest thing they can sell is potentially future flexibility in terms of expiring contracts. They're saying, well, hey, you may be after our future flexibility, but we're only doing it for players that really make sense and move the needle for us. So that seems to be the focus, that they're not going to make a move just to make a move. They want to do something with purpose and something that will actually make a difference.
I co-sign everything you just said. In general, my understanding of their trade approach, they are looking for 3-and-D wings. They want that rangy 6'6" to 6'8" player who can ideally start, but at a minimum, like, upgrade the rotation, be more of a two-way force, whether that's starting or coming off the bench. The challenge is they don't want to give up the first round pick if they unless it's a no-brainer, which I think right now there's maybe only a couple guys who check that box in terms of being worth a first round pick. They don't want to give up the first. They don't really want to trade Rui, and they don't really want to take back salary past this season. So when you take out what they're willing to trade and then also what they're not willing to take on, that Venn diagram of players who you can get for some combination of Gabe and Maxey and Dalton and a second and maybe a swap at most, and also don't have contracts extending beyond this year, that's a pretty short list of players who can be had for some combination of those salaries and those assets that also don't have contracts extending beyond this season. So I'm not quite sure who that is. Like, one name I like as an expiring is Matisse Thybulle, but is Gabe Vincent and a second getting that done? Is Gabe Vincent and Dalton Connect getting that done? Probably not. I don't see why Portland would do that. And again, they're both, like, be one thing if Matisse had an extra year or whatever, then like you could see why Portland would potentially do that, but that doesn't really make sense from the Portland side, especially with them trying to be competitive this year and be a play-in team that, you know, Matisse has been injured for a lot of the year, but like be a play-in team with a shot to maybe sneak in as like the 7 or 8 seed. I just go around and I'm like, I don't know who this mythical wing is, because all the guys we talk about, like Herb Jones and Andrew Wiggins are the two I think they would consider giving up the first 4 and would make some sense. But beyond that, even getting into, I mean, Keon Ellis, Iota Sumo, those are guys that could make some sense. Sadiq Bey has more time under contract. So like, how do they feel about that? It is at a pretty low number that maybe doesn't really impact your cap situation, but I don't know who that player is that is like not really beyond this year, but also is like going to make an impact to the point of being better than Gabe, but also the team is like, for some reason, willing to get off them for an expiring. Like that doesn't really make sense. So I'm a little skeptical of them adding like a real game changer. And again, I don't think looking at like Keon or Io or Sadiq, I don't think Gabe Vincent is getting it done plus a second. Right. So they're in a tough spot, I would say. Like, I don't really know what is realistic that's out there.
Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleber, these guys are both overpaid based on NBA standards. They would not be getting these contracts if they were on the market right now. They're not getting an $11.5 million contract. So their value on the trade market is as expiring contracts, but that inherently only has value if you're taking back non-expiring contracts. Otherwise, why are you just flipping out an expiring contract for an expiring contract? You need to have something.
Doesn't make sense
to go ahead and do something like that. So something will have to give. If the Lakers are going to get something done, most likely they will have to budge on something. They should be putting out there right now that, hey, we don't want to trade these things. We don't want to move Rui. We don't want to give up our future flexibility. We don't want to give up our draft capital. You got to give something. So if they do want to get something done, and if there's something worth it, something will have to budge there. But we'll see if that happens or not as we inch ever closer to that February 5th deadline. And
just for some housekeeping purposes here, their second round pick that they could trade is the 2032 second round pick. I feel like I always forget which year it is, but that's noteworthy because projecting out 6 years from now, you just don't know. Like Luka's going to be 32, turning 33 soon after. You just don't really know where things are going to be in terms of where the Lakers roster is 6 years from now. So that second round pick maybe has a little bit more value than I originally thought. But you also then need the patience of like, yeah, you got a second round pick, but it's 6 years out. Like that, a lot of front offices will not last 6 years, especially if you're in a rebuilding situation. So it's like there's sort of that, like how much do you actually value you might not even be making that pick in 6 years. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think Gabe plus that second is really moving the needle much. Next one from Mistra. Jovan and Trevor, I think we need to trade Rui sooner than later because he can't really do much beyond shoot, and that is going to be punishing in the playoffs. What do you think about that?
I think there's a couple options with Rui, and I think the big factor that needs to be considered here is not just, what is it the right decision to move on from Rui? Of course, we've talked a lot about it. Both you and I agree that he should not be in the starting lineup. Doesn't mean we don't like Rui. I like Rui a lot. I think he gets unlocked a little bit coming off the bench, and I like that role for him. I think it fits the team structure. I think it fits what Rui needs as well. But what can Rui get out there on the market as an $18 million expiring contract? That's an important thing to consider. But another thing that maybe doesn't get discussed enough is, what are his contract expectations? Because post February 5th, all the way up until June 30th, the Lakers can extend the contract that he's on right now. I would assume he would probably like a contract extension. The Lakers do like Rui Hachimura. But what is that number? If Rui Hachimura is telling the Lakers, I need 4 years, $100 million, that would give you more motivation to potentially package Rui in a trade and say, well, we don't want to be the team to pay that. Let's go ahead and make a move. If you know that Rui is saying, you know what, guys, I love it here. Let's do 3 years, $45 million, and I'm good with that. And you're probably going to have him on a positive value on that contract. That's got to be a factor in your decision-making as well. And we can't know as of this moment what exactly that would look like. So that, I think, is an important kind of behind-the-scenes piece that needs to be factored into any kind of decision on potentially moving Rui or not. I do think conceptually, while Rui is shooting, fits very, very well with a Luka or a LeBron, not both of them together. Ultimately, the big problem the Lakers have had for years and years and years now is they haven't had enough two-way players. So if you can move Rui and get a two-way player that can play both sides of the basketball, then I think that's something you have to seriously consider doing. But again, there's a lot of context around Rui besides just turn him into a two-way wing if you can.
Agreed. I think in terms of trades, like I would give him up for Herb Jones or Andrew Wiggins. Sure. If either one of those trades, either one of those teams is asking for him in a trade, I would do that in a heartbeat. I think when you get into like the DeAndre Hunter zone, that's where I'm not as convinced. Like I think he's probably better than Rui in a vacuum, but when you factor in the additional years that he has, I don't love that contract. But to this point, I think two things. One, if the Lakers don't trade Rui, that to me is a sign they're probably going to extend him or re-sign him, because I think it would be a gross mismanagement of that asset if they just let him walk. I think you should have traded him at that point. Like, it doesn't really make sense. If you're gonna keep him past the deadline, you should be extending but you should be extending or re-signing Rui at that point. And then you could flip him in the future if you so choose. But I think this is more of a role thing with Rui, where if you are playing him 22 to 26 minutes off the bench as a shooter and offensive-minded bench piece, that's great. If you are starting him and playing him 30-plus minutes and asking him to be your wing stopper, not so great, as we've seen with the starting struggles. So I think if they don't end up moving him, I think that there needs to be the recalibration of his role and what this group needs from him. And then also, it does seem like he probably ends up staying beyond this season. A couple super chats here. First one from Nala. Thank you for the super chat. Controversial, but I really like the Kuminga fit. Would you consider trading Rui and a first in a 3-team trade for Kuminga and Moody, +1 of Buddy, Sharp, and Highsmith? Yes, if the Lakers could somehow pull that off, I would. I'd probably prefer it as Sharp, Highsmith, Buddy in that order, but you could debate Sharp versus Highsmith. I just think the Lakers could use that type of big, so I might. And if you're already getting Kuminga and Moody, I don't think you necessarily need Highsmith in this scenario. But yes, this is the rare, I really like the reshaping the back end of the starting group / bench that I would give up the first. Like, I don't know if I would not give up a first for Kuminga or Moody in a vacuum, but the combination of those two plus one of these other guys, I know you're very detail oriented, Nala, so I assume you've done the math here with like what would work. I don't know what else the Lakers are giving up in this trade. I don't know what else Brooklyn's giving up in this trade, but from the Lakers perspective, I would do that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm generally of the mindset that unless I'm getting a locked in starter that's going to be around for at least the next 3 years, but that makes sense with Luka, I'm not touching that first round pick. This, you could squint and say, well, Moody or Kuminga could be a starter. Maybe. Is Kuminga a great fit? I don't even know. I mean, he's getting DMPs in Golden State. He has not shot the ball well enough, but there's certainly talent there. And then you add in the factor that, let's say it is, and I would rank it the same as you, which maybe not a great sign for Buddy, that Haywood Highsmith, who's been hurt, would rank ahead of him. But if you're getting Sharp, you're getting Moody, you're getting Kuminga, that's 3 guys that are timeline-wise mid-20s effectively, early to mid-20s that you're bringing in. That's a lot of youth. That's a lot of athleticism. Day'Ron Sharp gives you a lot of physicality in the paint. That, to me, when you talk about the types of players the Lakers need to add, the athleticism deficit that they've been at, that would go a long way, I think, towards turning that page and finally getting you the kind of pieces that you need. I don't think this would, and I assume you would agree with this, I don't think this would turn the Lakers into a finished product, but this would be a solid step down the road towards ultimately turning the team into what they need to become around Luka.
And to your point, like, I actually think Moody might be the prize here.
Yeah,
I think
I
Moody is a guy who could longer term, like he could be, we've talked about that, like maybe backcourt partner for Luka, who's more of a defensive minded guy who can shoot, play off the ball, do a little bit of everything. That's the type of guy I think would check those boxes and could develop into that. Kuminga, my only thing with Kuminga, and I made this point the day that the report came out about LA being interested in him. I see the talent. I see the fit. I think there is a universe in which if you have Kuminga as one of the front court pieces and you have the right 3-and-D wing and you have the right center, like that front court plus Austin and Luka, I think it could work together. My big fear with Kuminga, and I feel like it's just hard to quantify this and like how this factors in everything. I truly believe, and all the reports have indicated, like this guy views himself as a future all-star, that is far from guaranteed. He is had a pretty up and down trajectory. So it's like if I think we're starting to see now, like sometimes when we see some red flags or yellow flags from players early in their career, it's better to just move on or sort of put them in a certain bucket. And then, you know, if you're like a contender and just not really deal with that, because I think that the big fear would be Kuminga coming in being like, you know, I'm better than Austin, or we're going to make like a big three here, and that not ever fully materializing. And then it eventually turns into a toxic situation where he is upset, and he is then it sort of becomes like Golden State 2.0 again, right? So that would be my fear with Kuminga.
Yeah, and it's a good fear to have in that situation, because really when we're thinking about what you need around, let's assume Austin is part of the Lakers' future. I know he'll be a free agent this summer, but let's assume he sticks around. We're talking about putting pieces around Luka and Austin, and who knows what the situation with LeBron is going to be, but you want guys who are going to do all the other things. And I think it's part of why we've seen success for the lineup that has Jake LaRavia, Marcus Smart in that starting five, because they do all the other stuff. They're going to hustle. They're going to get to loose balls. They're going to get to deflections. They're going to occasionally, maybe not as consistently as we'd like, but knock down the open shot. Is Kuminga going to view himself as that type of player that is going to make his money in this league by doing all of the other things? Or is he a guy that wants to put up 25 plus every single night? My fear would be that he's more of the latter. But that said, talent-wise, and especially if you're getting those other pieces, I still think this would be a hard one to turn down.
Couple more super chats here before we wrap around 3 p.m. Musel K 420. Any chance AR gets traded? If so, what's LA asking for?
So I think the challenge with so the Lakers have historically set a very high bar for Austin Reeves. If you think back to a couple of years ago, there were the DeJounte Murray trade talks, and effectively it became the Hawks were like, well, maybe we'll do something around deal. In fact, from what I heard, they were having real discussions about a deal that would have landed the Lakers DeJounte Murray and D'Angelo Russell, and then ultimately the Hawks said, well, no, actually we want that Austin Reeves guy to be in the deal, and that essentially killed it. The Lakers have set a very high bar for him, and right now, even if, let's say the Lakers do set that high bar for Austin Reeves and they want to get the second guy next to Luka long-term, and you can pick just about anybody in the league that you think might fit that bill. The challenge is that team that has that player isn't going to trade for an Austin Reeves that isn't under contract past July, that could turn around and leave. So even if let's say Rich Paul is right and Jaren Jackson is the piece you have to go and get, right, for this Lakers team, you can argue whether or not the Lakers should do it. I would argue they should not do it. And I've had that conversation on my show, and you're shaking your head. I know you've had that conversation as well. But would Memphis do it? Knowing that Austin Reeves could go, well, you know what? It's closer to my hometown, but I don't really like it here. So you guys gave up Jaren Jackson, and I'm going to go sign, I don't know, I'm going to go sign in Miami or something over the summer. That's a risk that most teams will not take, not with one of their more significant pieces that they would have to give up in order to get Austin from the Lakers. So I just don't see it being realistic to move on from Austin Reeves at the trade deadline this year. I don't think it's something the Lakers would like to do anyway, but given what the asking price would be and the reluctance I'm sure that other teams would have to trade for him, I just don't see it as a real possibility.
I echo all of that again. I think just for some context on this, you mentioned DeJounte Murray. Here are some of the names the Lakers have refused to include Austin Reeves in trade talks for: Trae Young, Kyrie Irving, DeJounte Murray, De'Aaron Fox. That is the caliber of player. And that in some cases, you know, some of those were within like the last 12 to 18 months. Mm-hmm. Some of those were like 24 to 36 months ago. And that was with that version of Austin where at that, like 2-3 years ago, we didn't know Austin was going to be an all-star, right? Like you saw some kernels of potential, but 2 years ago, I would have not said Austin was going to become an all-star. And as we discussed earlier, he's probably going to miss the cut just because of the injuries, but he has had an all-star level season. He has had up until I think around when LeBron started to ascend, was having an All-NBA level season. So I think he's smashed that ceiling, but those are the caliber of players the Lakers have not wanted to include Austin in trade talks for and declined it. I mean, they straight up declined putting Austin and Max Christie in a Kyrie trade, going back a few years. So look, like through that lens, I think it has to be a top 20. Like if we're going through the all-star list, okay, sure, they would put Austin on the table for Ant or Brunson or Cade or Maxey or Mitchell. Then you get into like the Jamal Murray, Devin Booker range, and I'm not sure that they would actually put him on the table for that level of player. So like it's a pretty high bar. I think Giannis is obviously the one guy who's like potentially out there that they would put him on the table for, but their bar is basically like, I think it's like a top 15, top 20 guy. And if you're not in that class, they're not trading. So I think to get to the heart of this, I think they want to turn Austin into an upgrade, not people like the Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. That's like splitting Austin into two pieces who are currently both worse than him. They want to upgrade Austin into like a top 15, 20 guy, not downgrade. And then a couple more here before we wrap. Jay Spares, what up? Thank you for the super chat. You guys are awesome. Had this thought the other day. If someone made you keep LA exactly the same or swap rosters with a random team, excluding top 3 for each team, what are you doing? I think I would gamble on random. I would gamble.
Yeah, I would gamble too. That's not a great sign, but I thought the exact same thing. I get to keep LeBron, Luka, and Austin, and I have a chance that I get a team that has a number of two-way players on it. Yeah, I would roll the dice on that.
Like, I mean, well, I'm not going to go through every roster, but like in a heartbeat, I would take OKC, San Antonio, Denver, Minnesota, or Houston's 4 through 15 over the Lakers. Like, it's not even a thought for me. So yeah, I would gamble it. And then final one here from Musel K 420 before we wrap. JJJ and 2 first-round picks for Austin. 100% do it. Paying AR $250 million contract is not smart. I will note Jared Jackson Jr.'s contract is not great either, and you actually end up paying more for Jaren Jackson in terms of, well, I'm just double checking here. I mean, yeah, so he's got the extension kicking in next year, 49, 50.5, 52, and then a 53.5 player option in 29, 30 when he's going to be 30. So for those complaining about Austin's future contract, Triple J is actually making more than Austin would be making. And Triple J to me is like the ultimate, like, wish casting player where he's just not become the player that we have wanted him to become. I think he's regressed. I thought he was better in 2022 and in 2023 than he is right now. You look at his numbers, they've been on a downward trajectory. And that's where, like, 2 years ago, yes, I would have traded Austin for Triple J. Last year, I think it would be closer to a real conversation. This year, Austin is straight up just better than, I mean, they average the same amount of rebounds. Austin's averaging 10 more points a game, 7 assists per game. I don't think Triple J is like that defensive anchor that he used to be. The offense has slipped. He does not rebound well for a big man, which is like, if he's playing the 4 or the 5, you need more from a rebounding perspective. I mean, the 2 first-round picks is interesting. That would at least make me entertain it. I'm not saying I would not do this, but I think there's a bigger gap between Austin and Triple J than the average fan thinks there is.
Yeah, if there was the opportunity to get, say, Memphis's pick this year, and they're going to trade Ja, and things are going to be on the downward swing there, maybe there's something like that makes sense. But he's making more money. A few seasons ago he averaged 3 blocks a game. That's down to about a block and a half. Some of that he did, and he's talked about this, he did in order to try to stay out of foul trouble because he was consistently in foul trouble. His fouls haven't dropped. He's still in foul trouble.
Didn't change against the Lakers.
Didn't change. No, didn't change at all. So, look, Jaren Jackson,
he's actually averaging his highest fouls per game since the 2021 season.
Exactly. And so I look at him as, again, if the bar is you have to get the second guy you want with Luka long-term, Jaren Jackson, I think, tops out as the 3rd guy. And if he's your 3rd guy, you're stoked. But his contract isn't 3rd guy contract. So it's not going to work. Yeah.
Well, Trevor, appreciate the time today. Thank you for making your debut on Beyond the Block. We'll have to have you on again soon. And I'll be talking to you in a couple days on Lakers Collective on Friday. But anything you want to plug before we get out of here? I know you're doing your NBA TV broadcast tonight. So everyone tune in for that. But anything else you want to plug besides the usual?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can find me on the Front Office Show. We released one of those episodes earlier today. Keith Smith and I will be live for Pelicans Nets tonight. That's going to be at 5 o'clock Pacific time. We'll be live talking trades and things like that throughout that game. That's going to be on NBA League Pass. You can find us over there. And of course, go check out the Basketball Bulletin, Lakers Net. You guys probably know that stuff by now. But anyway, thank you very much for having me on the show, Jovan. Always enjoyed talking basketball with you. And like you said, we're going to do this again over on the Lakers Collective in a few days.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, Trevor. And we will now bring on Keoni, the man, the myth, and the legend. What up, man?
What up, Brate? It's been a minute.
It has. Glad we are doing this. We are now doing the Corner 3 segment for those who are unaware or tuning in for Beyond the Block the first time. We always end the show with the Corner 3 with Keoni. So topic number 1 is going to be, should any other big names be traded by the deadline, with some of those potential names being Giannis, AD, Ja Morant, Lauri Markkanen, Zion Williamson. We could go on and on, Darius Garland. Like, there's several guys who could theoretically be traded. With Garland, I think Cleveland's playing better, so that might just be a situation where they ride out this year and then reevaluate in the summer. But do you think any of these big names should be traded by the deadline? We obviously don't yet know if they seriously will be. I think Ja is probably the guy Ja and AD are the two guys who I think are closest to being traded, and there will be pushes over the next few weeks to get that over the finish line. But when I mentioned some of these names, like what pops up in terms of whether they should be traded, and then also potential destinations for them.
Yeah, I would not trade for Ja or Zion. Maybe Zion if it's like salary filler and a deal to get Jones and Murphy, because he has a fairly flexible contract where if he doesn't make a certain amount of games, they can cut bait on the deal. So him maybe if it's part of something else. I think Markkanen and Garland make the most sense, because I think even if Cleveland's playing better, I still think they need to tweak that backcourt for the playoffs. And I think Markkanen can be a huge impact on San Antonio or Detroit or even OKC. Like, can you imagine if OKC, they have so much assets that if they put together something to get him, that would be insane. AD to Boston, if the price isn't, depending on what the price is, would be kind of interesting. They're playing pretty well. And they don't even have Tatum yet. So I feel like that would be interesting. But I'm pretty sure the Kings are going to be in on Morant because that's just what the Kings do. But I would not.
It's my favorite second. It's my favorite Ja destination.
I would not be in on him or Zion unless it's part of something else that I'm doing, or if I'm just taking like kind of what Washington did, taking well, they didn't really get any assets right for Trey. They just got Trey, and so yeah. Unless I'm getting assets, I'm not taking either of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, I don't think I would trade for Ja or Zion if I were anybody. I mean, we just had the video today go viral with Ja getting into it with Vince Williams at practice. And yes, there are things that happen behind the scenes all the time, and guys run hot and guys get into it, and guys even fight at practices or in the locker room, and that stuff stays internal. And this was an external situation. But again, this was an external situation where there is media there. People are recording you. If you're Ja, you should know you're always under a microscope, and yet he can't control himself. He can't contain himself. And again, has a situation where like the lip readers have already been breaking it down like a Zapruder film, where he's saying, it is what it is. I don't give an F about y'all. I don't give an F about the team, like all this stuff. And it's like, dude, you can't be saying that when you're being recorded. Like, I just don't. His decision-making off the court, to say nothing of him taking a big step back on the court, I would let Memphis fans enjoy that and ride it out. I think the most interesting guys to me are Giannis, AD, and Markkanen. Does seem like there's been some buzz and a push to get AD traded, and you had this whole injury situation where it looked like he was going to be out for the year. Then there was pushback from AD publicly, and then it came out he will miss the next few weeks, but potentially could be back. Giannis, I just don't think it's going to like it should happen. You had the whole booing situation that happened last night. I just don't think it's happening before the deadline. I think this is a summer transaction with Milwaukee, unless he actually asks out, which he has indicated he will not, at least not now. I don't see it happening. AD, my fear with AD, and I talked about this last night on my show, is just with the health and him wanting an extension, that's just a tough contract for me to trade for, with like just not knowing how available this guy's going to be. Probably penciling him in as like 40 to 50 games annually moving forward. I don't know how you could have more confidence in him playing like more than 50 games. And then you also are like, you want to pay this guy $60+ million into his late 30s. That's not really a situation I'd be willing to take on. So AD, I do think there's like a window here of like the next 1 to 3 years where if he can somehow stay healthy, he could really transform a team and make a real impact. I just wouldn't feel great about giving up a lot for that. I don't think I would want to give up a blue chip prospect and a first or multiple firsts for that. Like, that's just too much for me. And then Laurie is interesting. I just don't know. Like Detroit, I think is probably my favorite one for him. San Antonio, I think I'm out on San Antonio making a trade. Or a big trade. I love Castle. I think Fox is a great like shepherd into the future for them. Harper's obviously a stud. I would not trade any of those guys. I mean, I guess Fox would be the one guy, but obviously everyone wants Castle or Harper, and I'm not touching that personally. So any thoughts on San Antonio potentially making a trade, and then sort of the fits with AD and Laurie?
So I sort of agree with you that they won't, but I think they could probably, with the draft assets they have, they could probably get a decent package put forward for marketing. Whether or not Utah will take it, Danny likes to play hardball is another question. But I think they can work around like having to include those players, maybe like the sell or
I would do
some
that.
picks and yeah, I would do that for sure. I think they should take a swing. I don't think their draft assets are quite going to play out the way they think they are. So I
That's
think
fair.
like they should think about taking a swing. But yeah, I think they're close. They're pretty close.
Yeah,
And
no,
then
I think that's
the thing with AD is like,
that's fair.
can he stay healthy?
And
like I mean,
we don't
Golden State
know,
would be
and it's
interesting for
probably a
AD
no.
if he were healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's probably a no. It's probably a no.
Yeah.
Okay, so topic number 2, who should be buying and who should be selling? So maybe let's go through here and name. I think there's some obvious, like, okay, sure, Detroit, like the teams at the top, I would say are clearly teams that should likely be buying or selectively buying, right, for the right cost, the right opportunity. So let's rule out the top 5 teams in both conferences, which would be in the West, OKC, San Antonio, Denver, Minnesota, LA. In the East, Detroit, New York, Boston, Toronto, Philly. Who are 2 of your favorite buyers potentially, and who are 2 of your favorite sellers, or maybe not like favorite sellers, but teams that probably should be selling regardless of how they think about their future?
So I think the Cavs and Orlando in the East should be looking to buy or tweak. I'd say tweak as opposed to buy. And in the West, I think the Suns maybe, and possibly the Warriors. But I really think like the sellers should be the Bucks. Definitely should be selling. I think the Hawks should continue to sell. They got Porzingis. They're looking to move forward. Young, long, and athletic, and they should keep going with that. And out west, you can basically take the bottom 7 teams should all be selling. Like the Clippers, the Grizzlies, the Mavs, the Jazz, the Kings, the Pelicans. Like I don't really see, and even the Blazers should look, because they're kind of redundant at some positions, so they
Mhm.
might want to tweak, I guess, as opposed to sell. But yeah, like Clippers, Grizzlies, Mavs, Jazz, Kings, Pelicans, they should all have the going out of business sign on their arena. Everything must go.
I would say so. They technically missed the cutoff, although they're like right there with the Lakers for number 5 in the West. But I would say for me, the two teams I would look. Oh, I'll go in a little bit of a different direction. I'll say Houston and the Clippers should be buying in the West. Houston obviously needs another ball handler, and I think the Fred VanVleet absence is starting to catch up to them in a way that was like somewhat predictable, but obviously they were able to stave that off earlier in the season. But I would say so. Houston is one, and then the Clippers. They're just in a situation where they have to, I think, buy, because unless they're selling off for draft picks and really pivoting toward a rebuild, they're playing better. They've won 10 of 12, and they have no incentive to tank or to lose because they don't control their picks for the foreseeable future. So that's one thing here. And then in the East, I would say I'm actually going to disagree a little bit and say, like, I just want to see Milwaukee go for it and be as desperate as possible. And it's going to end in, we already know the situation's ending in flames, where Milwaukee is going to be a train wreck whenever they end up flipping Giannis, and they're going to have the Dame situation on their books. They're going to have the Miles Turner situation or, contract on their books. Might as well just go all in and say, hey, like, let's just be pot committed to this. And if it goes down in flames, which it almost certainly will, it goes down in flames. And I'm with you with I think Orlando and Cleveland should be. So I'll actually pivot again and say I think Atlanta. I think that like the bones of a really good team is there, as we've seen that they've had some nice wins lately. They're really athletic. They're young. If there was a way, like, to me, they're an interesting marketing destination potentially. There is some overlap with Johnson and marketing, so I get if they wouldn't want to build a front court around those two being two of the three guys. But they're also an interesting AD situation depending on what the price is. And if it is Porzingis and Kennard, and you could keep Ricochet out of it, and it's like that plus another contract plus a pick, I actually don't mind that as a risk for them, because I think AD, the healthy version of AD for 40 to 50 games, especially in the East, I think could be a really impactful player that you just don't have to deal with the same behemoth front courts as in the West. So I think those two teams. And then in terms of sellers, I would say, I think I would go Miami and Chicago. I just don't see it for Miami this season. And I just think they're playing purgatory. They should probably make a trade and just sort of sell off the parts that they can sell off. I think Chicago has obviously been playing purgatory for like a decade, and they are going nowhere fast. So I would try to flip. What can you get for Iota Sumo? What can you get for Patrick Williams, etc.? And then in the West, I would say Memphis. Memphis to me is Miami West, where this is just a play-in level team that is probably going to lose in the play-in. Maybe they could somehow, if they catch fire, earn the 8 seed. I don't really see it, though. I don't think it's going to happen. And I'd be looking to flip, obviously, Ja and Triple J, but I'd also be looking to flip guys like KCP. And I think Jock Landale is actually someone who sneakily could be a very valuable pickup. And then in terms of seller, I guess Dallas would be the other one, where they are now with the AD situation and just them wanting to prioritize getting a top 5 pick if they can. I think Dallas is a team that should be trying to sell.
Yeah, my only thing with the Hawks was that I think they should keep selling and then put themselves in a position, since they have New Orleans draft pick, put themselves in a position to take a swing at Giannis in the offseason.
That's fair.
I think AD's interesting, but I don't think it puts them in contention the way like Giannis teamed with those
No.
athletic, long young guys would.
I just wonder, honestly, if how much in the mix they are for Giannis. And Atlanta is a big city. I feel like sometimes it doesn't get treated in that same class of it's not in the LA, New York, Chicago zone, but that next tier of cities. I think it's right there with the Houston or a Dallas or a Boston or something like that. But I don't know how much he really. I think if Giannis leaves, I think he wants to go to a big market, and that's why New York has been on the list. I think Miami will be on the list. I think the Lakers, depending on what they're able to do in terms of a trade package, could also be dark horse contenders on that list. But I think it's going to be like the big cities, him going to the big franchise, the big market. And also, like we've seen now with Luka going to LA, what that has done for Luka's brand. And a big part of that, of course, is LA and the Lakers, and just that, like the Lakers are the biggest team in the NBA. That has done a lot for his brand. But he was already one of the biggest and most popular players in the league. But then you add the Lakers to it, it catapults it. We saw a similar even bump with LeBron, I think, in the early portion of his Lakers LeBron tenure. But if Giannis goes to New York or even to a lesser degree Miami, I think that puts him at a different stratosphere in terms of his star power, especially if it's New York. And that's why I think he's been trying to push to go there. But third and final topic before we answer a couple of Q&A questions, favorite under the radar trade target and teams you would like to see pursue that player. So it could be a couple players if there's a couple guys on your mind, but who are some of your favorite under the radar trade targets? Guys that not the Herb Jones, Andrew Wiggins, Dylan Brooks, some of the guys we talk about all the time. Who are some of those guys?
I think like Draymond Green, maybe to Detroit or San
Wow.
Antonio.
Okay, you
or
going
Houston.
big fish hunting. Okay.
And then I think Brooks on a team that has like I I don't really like Brooks, but I think him on the Lakers can work because if you have LeBron and Luca there, you have two people who are clearly in command of the room, and I don't think he's going to be able to like have a negative impact he has some other places where there's kind of that void, like in Phoenix or in Memphis, where it was all young guys. Um, I think Brooks to Boston. I think Claxton to Boston would be interesting. Um, I still like Claxton to the Lakers. I think AD. I think AD, if he can stay healthy to Golden State, is interesting. I think marketing. That's not under the radar, but marketing in Golden State would be really interesting. Maybe LeBron to Golden State would be interesting, but I don't think he's going anywhere.
Trying to ignite the chat with that one. I'm going with much smaller names here. I'm going Ochai Agbaji is a name in Toronto that I think he could be. I would like him more as like a good 3-and-D bench wing for some contender, but I think he also could potentially be a starter depending on, like, I think for the Lakers, he would be in the mix to potentially start just based on his two-way abilities compared to the rest of the roster. But I think he could have some utility with Denver, with Minnesota, with Phoenix, with Golden State. So I think those teams at the top of the West, looking at some of the other teams, like I think New York could use that off the bench. Boston could use that off the bench. Philly, Cleveland. Like I think that there's several teams who could use an Agbaji type. I also look at Day'Ron Sharpe as another guy I really like. I like him for the Lakers. I like him for. I don't like Phoenix outside of Mark Williams. I don't love their center situation, so Sharpe could be someone there. I think he could help Golden State. Looking at the East, I think he could help Boston. I think he could help Toronto. I think he could help Cleveland maybe as like a backup 5. So yeah, I think those are a couple of my favorite guys that I think kind of fly under the radar in terms of Agbaji and Sharpe are two guys who are on like Agbaji's obviously on a good team, but not really getting that opportunity. And then, of course, like you got the Keon Ellis, Iota Sumo. Those guys are less under the radar because I think they are widely desired and coveted across the league. But those are also guys who I think could have a bigger impact than anticipated.
Rounding out the edges for teams.
Mm-hmm. This is an interesting one from Madison. MPJ, well, he says MPJ would be nice on the Lakers, but I think MPJ is another guy who, like with the season, we just talked about him. Trevor and I both had him on our all-star list. Like, he's a guy who, if he goes to Detroit or he goes to some other team that needs front court, like Golden State, like I don't know, he goes somewhere that, I mean, that's actually interesting. Like some sort of Kuminga MPJ package. It's tough to make the money work, but if you were able to do that for Golden State, I think that would be like a huge get for them.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't know about the Lakers though. Like, he's not a great defender. They already have defensive problems.
I don't think they can afford him. It's hard for them to afford anybody
yeah.
above like the mid-20s. Anybody else before we get into the Q&A?
I mean, KCP to contender, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I guess Toronto has, if they kind of got to figure out what they want to do, because they kind of have some redundant pieces on the wings. So someone from up there, maybe like a Dickey or someone moving around to add some shooting somewhere would be interesting, I guess.
All right, let's get into the Q&A here before we wrap up. Super chat from MuselK420. Jovan, I agree with you on Triple J, but 77 plus AR plus King in the same lineup is not going to work. If LA keeps AR, you'll still, I'm assuming you're saying here, you'll still need a two-way wing and a defensive big. I like AR, but not around 200 plus million. Again, I will just continue to echo, I'm not saying don't trade Austin. I'm just saying that I think the players that Austin is being lumped in with are worse players than Austin. And in the case of Triple J, it's not even just like, I think he's gotten worse as a player over the last couple of years. You also factor in, for me, like the Team USA situation. He had a golden opportunity to be a big force for Team USA, and he got thoroughly outplayed and dominated at different points of that international competition. And I just have real questions of like, if Triple J is a big game player, like I don't have that confidence in Triple J being a big game player. And again, I think people are holding on to who Triple J was in 2022 and 2023 and not updating their view of him as like, he has not been the same player. And I think he is worse defensively. He has slipped from being one of the best defenders and rim protectors in the league to still being a very good one. But like there is a little bit of a gap there between him and a Wemby, him and a Chet, him and some of the other best rim protectors and defensive anchors. And then he's not a good rebounder. So that is something you have to game plan around when you're building out a defense for him. Is like, he's looked better next to a more traditional center who has a certain amount of size, but now you're committing to playing two big lineups. I don't think that player is DeAndre Ayton. So you got to figure that out. Then it also turns Triple J into a more of a stretch big and a jump shooter, which he has developed as a jump shooter throughout the course of his career, but I don't like want him spamming being like a stretch four or taking a bunch of threes or jumpers. I still like him more around the basket, either as a pick and roll guy or a post up threat. So I don't, it's more so like an anti Triple J take than it is a pro Austin take. And then again, though, for the people complaining about Austin and the money, Triple J is making more money than Austin over the next few years in each of the next 4 seasons, even if Austin gets the big contract this summer. So it's like, you can't even make the money argument either, because Triple J makes more, and in my opinion, is clearly a worse player. Like, I don't think he's been a top 50 player this year. I don't even know if he's been a top 60 player this year. And to trade maybe a not top 60 player for Austin, even if you're getting a pick or something in that, I just think I think you're getting objectively worse, in my opinion.
I think Austin makes sense. And Austin being the the PC move makes sense in a vacuum, but his money isn't equal to the caliber of player you'd want to bring back right now because he's still on the team friendly deal. He has an out, which gives him options, which means the team you're trading him to doesn't know that he's going to stay there necessarily. And then they're in a hard position because it's probably a 2-year point to where they can get real value for Austin. But that's telling Luca basically 2 years of waiting. So I just think they're in a really difficult position with Austin right now, just the way things have aligned with his contract and and the structure of their roster and the way that rosters are being created right now in the league.
Smokey says Evan Mobley has been horrible this year. I'm still trading him for AR. Totally different situations, totally different players. I think Evan Mobley is better than Triple J. He's also younger than Triple J. I think he has more upside than Triple J. He's a much better rebounder. I think he's a more versatile defender who could switch better, switch on to wings and perimeter players. So I hear what you're saying in terms of like, yeah, just because a player's not necessarily having the best year, you wouldn't trade them for. But like, I would say this, I would not feel great if I'm going into war and the best big man on the team is Triple J. I don't feel great about that against OKC. I don't feel great about that against San Antonio. I don't feel great about that against Denver. I just don't. It's more so being out again. It's more so being out on Triple J rather than like a pro Austin take. I would trade Austin for Evan Mobley. That's actually someone I would trade Austin for. I would not think twice about that. So I'm glad you're making this point. I know you've been making a lot of pro Triple J points in the chat. I'm glad you're bringing this up because this is an example of like on paper, yes, Austin's been better than Evan Mobley. Austin has had a better season than Evan Mobley, but these things have context and nuance. And my point is, I think there's a notable gap between Evan Mobley and Triple J. And I think that would be backed up by, if you did a GM survey, I think all 30 GMs would take Evan Mobley over Triple J. I do not think a single GM, including the GM in Memphis, would take Triple J over Mobley. So this is a nice point to highlight. Yes, there are players on paper who are having worse seasons than Austin that I would still take over Austin, with Evan Mobley being one of those. But Evan Mobley and Triple J, to me, there's a notable gap there.
Yeah, not only that, you had mentioned, you and Trevor had talked about like Triple J's inability to stay in games. So not only is his defense waning, but he can't stay on the court, and the adjustments he's made to try to stay on the court are impacting his defense. So yeah, I'm
And he's
Mobley,
averaging the most fouls he's averaged in 5 years. So like, yeah. And then, you know, Smokey is noting that Triple J is a better scorer. Like, sure. I think he's featured more. I don't know that he's necessarily a better, like, I think if you put if you swap their situations, I actually think Triple J's numbers would go down and Mobley's numbers would go up. I think Triple J is in a better situation to feature him offensively, where in Cleveland, Mobley is sometimes even the third option behind Mitchell and Garland. Those two guys are high usage perimeter players who are running the show, and he has to eat off of that. I also think Mobley's a much better passer, averaging 4 assists per game this year, and has been 3+ the last 3 years. But I don't frankly think it's close. I mean, Evan Mobley just made All-NBA second team last year. I think Evan Mobley last year was better than any point of Jaren Jackson Jr.'s career. And again, I think there's 2 fatal flaws with Jaren Jackson. He can't rebound and he can't stop fouling. And he has taken himself out of big games before because of the foul trouble. I don't want that. So I want to retire the Triple J conversation because we can agree to disagree. But, you know, I don't think it's close. And I frankly think if you surveyed NBA personnel, they would not think it's close either.
You're also creating the same problem you have right now and the same problem you had before, right? So if you bring in Triple J and you play him and LeBron together, it's like playing Rui and LeBron together. They're both really fours, and now you're playing one of them like guarding a perimeter player. And then if you play him at the 5, you get the 80 thing, right, where he's undersized and he doesn't really want to do it. So you're just going back to what you were trying to get away from the last couple years.
That's a good point. Anything else before we wrap here? Anything else you guys have in the chat? Trying to see. Cage Britt asks what about MPJ to Milwaukee for a last ditch attempt to convince Giannis? Something like Kuz, Bobby, 2026 pick in 2032 could only send one of those.
I think
that's interesting.
That sounds like something Milwaukee would do.
It does sound like something Milwaukee would do. I
don't know. I don't think it would work, but it does sound like something they would do.
I also think like Bobby Portis is one of those guys where I think he has a lot of value specifically for Milwaukee, just as like a third big and a guy who could close and give them some optionality in terms of their lineups, and like sometimes closing next to Giannis as a stretch big. I know Turner can obviously stretch the floor as well, but I do like Bobby's had some big performances from them, for them through the years, and is a beloved fan figure there. So I just have a little apprehension of potentially trading him, and then I don't know. I mean, I guess you're Jericho Sims at that point as like your backup five. I don't love that, but obviously, I mean, Kuz had a really rough performance against the Lakers the other night, and I first, like the first few possessions he touched the ball, I was like, is he think he's still on the Lakers? Like, I'm not really sure what's going on here, but he ended up having like a decent game for the Bucks. But you're certainly upgrading the starting group by like a significant amount. I would try to find a way to keep Bobby Portis out of this, as crazy as that sounds.
Jovan, question for you. Would you rather, you don't want to switch for Triple J, but wouldn't you rather have all three, Austin, Luka, and LeBron and Portis, than switch out Austin for Triple J?
Wait, repeat that.
I know you don't want to do the Austin Triple J thing, but
Yeah.
I would rather have like Portis, make some deal for Portis and keep Austin than like switch Austin for Triple J.
Yeah. I would rather do that as well. Again, I think if they're moving Austin, it's got to be a top 20 guy. And again, don't even take my word for it or my perspective on it. I'm telling you what the Lakers think and how they've moved the last few years. I don't know if you caught the end of our part where we were talking about it, but like they have not included Austin in trade talks for Trae Young and Kyrie Irving and DeJounte Murray and De'Aaron Fox. And you could argue for all those guys except Kyrie, that was like arguably those guys' peak trade value at that time individually. Fox, I think it was like right before or right after the Light the Beam year, and then Trae, that was like coming off of, a little bit removed from the conference finals, and DeJounte Murray, that was when he was an all-star, still had a positive defensive reputation. They would not trade Austin for those guys then. I don't see that changing in terms of like the caliber of player. It's got to be a really, really high level player. So again, people throwing out some of these names, I just don't think they're good enough.
Agreed.
Pville asks, what's the most reasonable trade package the Lakers can offer for Day'Ron Sharpe? That's a tough one. It's probably some combination of like Dalton, a due, and a second, because he's making 6.3, and then next year is a 6.3 club option. So I would say it's probably Dalton, a due, and a second. And even then, if I'm Brooklyn, like, why am I doing that? That's not really moving the needle.
Would you do a protected first for him?
I don't think I would, especially with the contract situation of just there's like, I don't know the bird rights off the top of my head, but he obviously has a rapport or would have a rapport with the organization because he has the same agents as Austin Reeves and Jake LaRavia. I just think with I just think it's a little bit of a high price for him. I do like him, and I don't know, maybe if it was like a top, depends what the protection is. If it was like top 20 or even like top 22, I would maybe do that because at that point there's minimal risk. But I still don't really love the notion of, I would rather flip somebody else for a second or two and then try to see if you could go get him for like 2 or 3 seconds. But they don't really like, the only player they really have to flip for seconds would be Rui. But now you're taking a notable step back in the rotation in terms of if you just add in, if you take out Rui and add in Sharp, I think you're better at the big man position, but you are taking a hit on the perimeter. Like, I know we could talk about Rui and his limitations, but like just taking Rui, like we just saw what taking Rui off the team did the last couple of weeks. If you're not adding another perimeter guy, it gets pretty light there. So they're in a tough spot with like, they just don't have a lot to trade. Sure. We'll wrap on this one because we got to talk Lakers. We got to talk Giannis. Sure. Miz, could there be a trade for Giannis that the Lakers could make? I think it would have to be in the offseason or next season. And that could be potentially a sign and trade with Austin, or if Austin's under contract, flipping him and his new salary next season. Right now, it's really difficult for them to get even to the Giannis money. And then you're also cobbling together multiple players. So there's like the roster imbalance of trading 4 or 5 guys for like 1 or 2 guys from Milwaukee. But I don't think you're getting, even if you're throwing in Austin in there, Austin and basically 1 pick as like the 2 highlights of the deal, I think there are better deals out there for Giannis. So I don't see it happening now.
Especially since Austin can walk. So
yes,
there's no, there's no guarantee he now. But that's the problem is like they get 3 first-round picks right on draft day that they can move. And that and Austin might be interesting, but then they won't be able. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't think that'll work with a sign and trade. Do you know the numbers off your head? I don't think that they can get there.
With you're saying a sign and trade with Milwaukee?
Yeah, or
because
but
of the
then
first
Austin
apron.
still has. Yeah, but then even then, like Austin can be like, no, I'll just shot myself. Like who? I mean, let's be honest. Who wants to go to Milwaukee?
Yeah, I don't. I've been saying that to your point. Like I just made this point again last night that Austin is in a weird spot trade value wise, where you could argue his like trade value for his production does not match his trade value for his contract, because his contract, you're getting him for less than half of a season, and then he is a serious flight risk, especially for Milwaukee. I truly believe this is how it let's just say Giannis has his list and it's the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Heat, and they call the Lakers tomorrow. The Lakers make their best possible offer and Milwaukee says yes. Here's how I think this plays out. I think Austin goes there. Austin does what he does. He puts up big numbers. He balls out. He has a great close to the season. Then he goes and leaves. I do not think Austin stays in Milwaukee. I would say that with pretty high confidence. So now it's different if he sign and trades, obviously, and like agrees to going there, depending on the contract. But Austin's gonna have max or near max contract offers this summer, especially if it's a situation where he gets traded and then now it's actually an open market situation. He is going to have multiple teams that are looking to pay him in that, let's just call it like 210 to 240 range for multiple years. So I do not think he would stay in Milwaukee. I think he would go elsewhere. And I think Milwaukee would have a lot of egg on their face, and it would look really bad for them that this was the crown jewel of the Giannis trade and they left. So that's where I don't even see it happening this year, because I think Austin's just straight up leaving if he goes to Milwaukee.
Yeah, he's in the driver's seat until he inks that deal.
Yep. And that's the part where people say to sell high on him, and like I get why people think that, but you're not really selling high on him because you are like, again, the contract versus the production are at 2 different value levels that I think it's really difficult to get a player of equal or similar value for Austin based on the contract situation. But Keoni, appreciate the time. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Just same old stuff, sign up for those memberships and keep hitting like and subscribing to all the Beyond the Block, being Buha's Block, and all the podcasts that Jovan does on other channels with other people as well.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. Apologies for the delay here, but things were pretty crazy with the holiday season. But we are back, and we will try to be doing it once a week moving forward into the off season, and then we'll figure out the schedule then. But appreciate you all for tuning in. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow night after Lakers Hornets. I will talk to you all then. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to the chat.